At a glance, it's peaceful, even pretty. But beneath the surface, potentially deadly toxins sit in the sediment.
People fish on the river. They shouldn't, because there's literally cancer-causing chemicals in the fish and the crabs.
For more than a century, 100-plus companies contributed to the river's demise, dumping dioxins, PCBs, heavy metals.
Please understand that there should be yellow crime scene tape around the Passaic River right now. This city's main artery, the reason the city was founded was the Passaic River. It was stolen from us.
Today, the EPA unveiled its plan to take the river back. Dredge 8 miles from Newark Bay to the Belleville-Newark border. Remove 3.5 million cubic yards of sediment, enough to fill Red Bull Arena 3 times. The river will be capped from bank to bank to prevent any more toxins from surfacing.
This was a very carefully considered plan.
Before the dredging begins, the cost of cleanup, $1.38 billion.
It is going to take decades to heal the river, but this cleanup is the best shot.
Several decades ago, it held regattas and transported goods, and as it industrialized in the area, it became a dumping ground for those companies. Close to 100 responsible parties on the Passaic River, the main one being Diamond Alkali, who produced Agent Orange during the Vietnam War. And a byproduct of the production of Agent Orange is dioxin. And even in small amounts, dioxin is very toxic. And the workers at the Diamond Alkali facility on the banks of the river used to shovel it off of the banks into the river. And when it got too high in the river, they would get in a little boat and then they'd tamp it down and move it out. And because the river's tidal, it just spread this dioxin all through the New York, New Jersey harbor estuary. So it's caused toxic fish, crabs. We have numerous fish advisories and do not eat advisories in the area because of the level of contaminants in the fish. And it's just turned this perception that the river is a wasteland and a dumping ground. And so it's also really shut off the river to generations of members of the community.
People tell us sitting on their porches and watching men in moon suits and Tyvek suits vacuuming streets while they sat with their children on their porches and wondered, wow, if they need a Tyvek suit and I've been sitting here living in my life here for 20 years, should I be worried?
Because the public lives along the Passaic River. They have a vested interest in the outcome of whatever cleanup might happen on the river. Some people fish along, in the river, despite the bans and advisories not to do so. There's a huge population of immigrant communities, Portuguese-speaking communities. There are low-income and homeless populations that rely upon fish and shellfish for sustenance. The river flows through the most heavily urbanized area in the country. More than 2 million people live in what we call the project area. Park benches actually faced away from the river, if you can imagine that.
We actually hated the river. It looked really ugly. My friends used to joke, they go, oh, we're on waterfront property. We used to think that was the most hilarious thing. We'd laugh. It was just this blight. You couldn't get near it. It served no purpose. And I'm shocked now at my attitude. But it was really something, if people didn't pay attention to it, because frankly it was painful to look at.
Well, I think on this site in particular, it was originally designated a Superfund site, a portion of the Passaic River, at this point nearly 3 decades ago, and there have been no action on it at all. And it wasn't until we started working together as a community in an organized way under the Superfund law that things started moving again, and that there was a real dialogue and accountability with the agency to make that happen.
I think Sister Carol saw an opportunity to open up a conversation, and she knew that it was going to be a long-term conversation, because cleaning up this river was going to take not years but decades. And knowing that, I think she really dug in and committed herself to building the necessary relationships that it was going to take to bring a community that was quite vulnerable and at risk and disenfranchised from the process along on a very long journey. And in order to do that, you have to make people feel like they have a stake in something and that somebody's listening to them. Sister Carol was a champion of the Passaic River. She dedicated many, many years to trying to restore the riverfront and also clean up the Passaic River. She was not just a champion, but she was fierce, right? So she really wanted to hold polluters accountable, politicians accountable. She was extremely dogged and persistent and committed to the cleanup of this river, and it meant a lot to her. She grew up in the city of Newark, and she remembers as a child, playing in the city and how little interaction people had with their river. It was already polluted. It's been polluted for over a century, and she connected very much not just to the river and the ecosystems and all of God's creatures, but she connected it. She wanted to see people reconnecting to those things.
My take on community advisory groups is that they're extremely effective, but they have to be it has to be sort of at the right moment in time. But as we got closer to this removal project, the removal of the most contaminated sediment next to the old diamond alkali facility in Newark, we decided, you know what, this is the ideal time for a group of this broad cross section of folks, academia, businesses, labor, community, environmental organizations. We ultimately reached out to the Ironbound Community Corporation and a wonderful person named Sister Carol Johnston. And I said, Carol, there's something called the Community Advisory Group that we use in the Superfund program. And I think you need to be involved. I think a broad group of folks need to be involved in this. And so she started the process. She and Debbie Manns, Executive Director of New York, New Jersey Baykeeper.
Carol had a very sophisticated sense of the way that politics work and also how decision making happens. And she saw that was really nothing happening. Years would go by, decades would go by, and nobody was paying any attention to the river. And she saw other communities, like in the Hudson River, that had established community advisory groups and became real voices of local people. So she thought, our community should have a body like this.
Well, I remember the first meeting, even though we didn't know it was a CAG, she got a bunch of people together in this church, and the EPA folks came out. And I joked with David about it, because we weren't that nice to them. It was like, what are these suits doing here? What is this?
It really boiled down to relationships among each other, between the CAG members and EPA and the other agencies, the other federal and state agencies that come to the monthly CAG meetings.
Really, Carol helped EPA and EPA helped us. It was a very much a give and take relationship to get on that road to, we all want to see the river cleaned up. So how are we going to get there?
It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of honest expectations, transparency. It really is about time and commitment, and I think residents here, even though they weren't getting fast solutions or quick solutions by any means, EPA kept showing up and the people kept showing up and talking and taking the hard questions and taking the challenges and being honest that they are stuck, that there wasn't as much that they could be doing right this second. So that just eventually built some trust.
EPA has tried to work very hard with the community to keep contact with the community, to get response from the community, and the community. They've held meetings here in the community and other communities that border the river.
When Sandy happened, we had pretty bad flooding And the same people in the EPA that we were dealing with called me, and they came into the community on a Saturday, and I was saying, I can't believe this, you're coming here on Saturday.
We brought the highest levels of EPA management to them. Rather than having them come to us, we had our regional administrator and other managers routinely go to the CAG meetings and say, and sometimes we didn't have good news. We had some news of delay, and and there was frustration with delay, but they appreciated our candor, our honesty.
We like to think of these people as sort of nameless, faceless bureaucrats sitting in an office somewhere far away from the problem. But having the CAG meetings puts, flesh and bone to the people who are working on these projects. They know who to call, they know who to ask questions to, so it's nice because I think in the development of those relationships and the cultivation of those relationships, people feel heard. I think we have been heard. I think the EPA knows that there is an organized group of voices on the ground, close to the community, that knows what's going on. And that's right down to being able to see the river from their house.
What we did was we had our project managers, come and give presentations, and they really worked hard and were really dedicated to the spirit and intent of community involvement, and really, helped the public understand some very complex technical issues and boil it down into understandable terms.
And then specifically laying out where the opportunities were for the community groups to affect how the project is done. And so one of the key elements that we worked on with them was a community health and safety plan that we decided to develop specific to this project so that we could fold in those important public weigh-in opportunities, since they live right there, right near the site, while we would be implementing the dredging project. It was a very active process. We met on a regular basis. They provided their feedback sort of at every step of the way, and it really did help inform the way that we put the project together. There were multiple spots in the process where the input of the community advisory group really shaped what we did, from what might seem like simple things in terms of which emergency hospitals we had on call if there were any problems, to the driving routes that the trucks would use to take the materials from the dewatering facility that had been constructed to the rail yard where it could be shipped out of state.
So when we had an initial removal action of some of the contaminated material, the community was very interested in knowing what the truck routes were to remove it out of the community. And so, based on community feedback, well, there's this community neighborhood here, or there's this here, and so that was a very specific instance of, the EPA coming out and saying, this is what we're thinking, can you provide the local knowledge and feedback on whether this makes sense?
When we started, there was no such concept of environmental justice, so now you will see somehow we've gotten to the point where there is an idea of environmental justice.
Once you have some recognition that this group is a high-functioning group, people want to give more resources.
So Sister Carol Johnson was a very well-informed individual. She has passed since then. Sorry, getting a little emotional when I think about her. But she knew about a program that EPA had at the headquarters level called Superfund Job Training Initiative. And so she came to me and she said, hey, it's great that you're going to do this cleanup. We're really excited about it, and it's going to be a huge benefit to our community. But on top of getting the cleanup, we think we can get more. And one way we can do that is by having our our local community be trained to do the work to actually get jobs out of this. And you have a program that can do just that.
I was looking at the reports in sort of an academic way. What is the science? And does each of these options work? How much does it cost? But after talking to the community and trying to make a presentation about these three options, people were asking detailed questions about, is it the right thing to do to just pick up contaminated sediments from one environment and put it into another environment, picking it up from the river and putting it into the bay? Is it the right thing to do? Is it, long term, would you want to tell your children that that's what you did with contamination from this part of the river? And it just brought in a more of a human evaluation to the thing, to say it's not just the science, it's something that you should sit back and think, well, is it the right thing to do? Is it, how does it impact future generations?
This community advisory group, which is, by the way, has won a national award recently because of a panel of folks from around the country looked at a number of nominations and decided, hey, this group is deserving of this national award for citizen excellence and community involvement.
One of the most enduring parts of the CAG is that we have a structure, we have a vision, we have a way that we organize. We're fair and open and transparent, so anybody can come, anybody can listen and participate and learn.
It's highly technical, very, very complex. So this group, though, was extremely successful in operating cohesively with the assistance of some facilitation, which is also a key to the success of this community advisory group, is that we brought in and paid for a facilitator to help run the meetings, to identify the issues, to help the community advisory group identify what its core values were in the cleanup of the river. And that was key, identifying what the community values were and sticking to those values as they met month after month after month.
And the CAG has taken the time to get very well educated about the issue. So now anyone that comes in front of us, is subject not just to like Anna and mine with our background, our perspective, but the whole community, and that was the whole intent.
Because of my attendance at the CAG, I've gotten to meet Passaic River Coalition, the New York, New Jersey Baykeeper, the Hackensack River Keeper, and other environmental groups that come to give presentations.
I think it's very authentic, and it's people who care deeply about the river and this community.
And this group understood that they were not going to have a say-so in every detail of the studies and the engineering evaluations, and they didn't demand that. This group was very reasoned in their approach to working with EPA. They held our feet to the fire when they needed to do so, but they weren't hair on fire. They also had a very keen understanding of when the time was right to provide their input. They were able to, at the right moment, weigh in a very informed way.
It used to be people didn't really realize what was going on, but now I think because of the education and the involvement through the CAG, people are demanding, they expect a cleanup. The first time that we were out on that riverfront park, the opening of this beautiful park on the river that everyone dreamed of and thought was just crazy, that it was never going to happen. That moment was really powerful too, because for a first time in generations, whole groups of people and communities could see the potential of what a river cleanup could mean.
So the day that park opened was extraordinary. We had a parade that went all the way through town. And the day they broke the ground, and that was very contaminated land. People who were the early strugglers for that park, 30 years earlier, they were walkers, they're like really elderly, and they were all there. So these things have made a big difference. Now that we have the beginning of a river walk, people are starting to relate to the river.
The riverfront park, now that it's there, it's going to create a whole new generation of advocates and activists who know that there's a river here and it needs to be cleaned up, and they're going to understand the importance of that.
So this is a complete transformation. I take a lot of pictures, and I'm taking a lot of really beautiful pictures of the river now that it's flowing. Sounds funny, but it seems like it's happier.
Sister Carol taught me very early on to pay attention to the details, right? It's really important that you do your homework and that you're not just sitting in the meetings and letting it all go by you, that you're actually engaged and listening carefully. And I think it's an important investment because it's an investment that hopefully will pay off, that in the end will mean that the voices of people in this community will get heard. And that's why I come here, is because I know that my parents can't be here, hopefully my daughters won't have to be here, that hopefully this is an investment in time and diligence that will mean a cleanup that's responsive to the needs of the community.
Sister Carol is that she, in my opinion, really is what made the whole Phase 1 removal action the success that it was, in really bringing everybody together. She just was so passionate and so, she was kind of like the mother of us all. She was really a force to be reckoned with, and just such a charismatic figure that even through the tough work, she made it you feel very sort of happy about what you were doing, that she gave you that drive and that motivation to keep pushing through and to do the right things. And so, I feel like a lot of people looked at me to a certain extent of, that project was this big success because of all the work you put into it. But I really credit her.
Run on and on through endless days, and in the rise, the light and glow of grand old rivers in their flow, from distant hills to